Hello, everyone. Welcome to Hyperspace on Dark Matter Radio Network. I'm your host, Solaris BlueRaven. I want to thank everybody for tuning in this evening, and a special thank you to webmaster and producer Keith Rowland. And my special guest this evening is Niara Isley. Niara Isley has been a spiritual seeker from the cradle up, having discovered a disturbing 3-month block of missing time from 1980 during her tour of duty in the U.S. Air Force. Niara underwent hypnosis to investigate this, other memories and strange dreams from childhood. What she discovered turned her life inside out for many years, launching her into an in-depth study and research to find out what happened to her, why, and in what political and social context. Also suffering from post-traumatic stress herself, she had to find ways to deal and heal from the ensuing emotional fallout. That healing journey has been an awakening to the multidimensional universe we all live in. A lifelong learner across a broad spectrum of disciplines, including various sciences, personal growth, and spiritual practice, Niara's healing process opened her up to amazing insights about the world we live in and our place and relationship to the larger universe around us. Niara has a BA in social work and has worked in the helping professions for many years. In 2013, Niara completed a book about her experiences, healing, and insights called Facing the Shadow, Embracing the Light, a journey of spirit retrieval and awakening. Today, she is an independent body-centered therapist, a writer, educator, and an artist. She's also certified in Dolores Cannon's quantum healing hypnosis therapy and working on additional certifications at EFT, emotional freedom technique, and trauma-releasing exercises, TRE, developed by Dr. David Berselli to better help others heal who have experienced trauma and PTSD. Niara is also a member of Exopolitics Institute Advisory Board. Her websites are facingtheshadow.embracingthelight.com and www.encounterswithhealing.com, and her contact information is gaiatribe.niara@gmail.com. And please welcome Niara to the show this evening. Hi, Niara.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for joining us this evening. Mm-hmm. It's good to hear your voice, and it's good to be in touch with you again.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, we touched base over there at the Mind Control Summit back in Vegas, sir.
Oh, I know. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah, it was really good to have you there. So what have you been up to as of late?
What have I been up to? Well, I was just in Las Vegas again to speak for Las Vegas MUFON in August, and then I stayed about 10 days after that and did hypnosis sessions for people in the Las Vegas area, and that was wonderful. It did some good work there, and I think people were pretty happy with it.
Excellent.
So it was really a good trip, and then I got back home, and I'm trying to catch my breath and move on.
Oh, exactly.
It's just so busy.
Oh, yeah. That's a good thing, though. Busy's good.
Mm-hmm.
And I do want to talk about you in general and your background so people can get kind of an idea insofar as where you've been. I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with you already, but I did want to talk about your military background and everything that sparked what had happened to you. So let's start there at the military. Let's use that as the benchmark, and insofar as what you were doing in the military, your position, and what year and all that good stuff.
Yeah, well, I went in the military in April of 1979. I was in until April of 1983, 4 years, and was U.S. Air Force. And my dad raised me to be a patriot, so even though I'm really a spiritual person and pretty much a pacifist, especially these days, I decided that I would like to serve my country, and the flip side of it was also wanting to learn a trade in electronics, which unfortunately I didn't really learn too much. Mm-hmm. Not that I could carry it forward, but the weird things that happened after I'd been out of the military for almost 10 years, I was talking to a friend, and we were talking about all kinds of different paranormal things, and he knew I was in the military, but he noticed I didn't talk much about it. It's kind of like it was a dead subject. And he thought, well, that's kind of strange. She never talks about it. Even when asked, she kind of answers the question and then drops it. So he sat me down one day and said, tell me about your military time from beginning to end. And so I did. And when I got to January of 1980, suddenly I stopped talking because I couldn't remember anything for 3 months. January, February, March, and probably part of April. And I couldn't remember a thing. And when I had that realization that I couldn't remember, I had a wave of nausea kind of go over me. I didn't actually get sick, but I felt sick. Mm-hmm. And then I wanted to find out what happened. So I ran into Bud Hopkins at the Whole Life Expo in Las Vegas in 1994. And I asked, he asked if I wanted to do hypnosis to try to recover that, and I said yes. And that's when this whole weird thing came out. And I got to say here, little gray guys with big eyes I was prepared for, because I had a feeling that was going on in my life. But I had no idea about even the thought or the term of military abductions or my lab at that time. It was totally foreign to me in every way. So when I had these memories come out of, this military situation, it was something I was completely unprepared for, and it was terrifying.
Mm-hmm. And can you elaborate on some of these memories?
Sure. When I went under with Bud, and then also later with Gloria Hawker in 2003 to look again at those memories. Basically what happened was I was taken out in the middle of the night at gunpoint, and we were put on these vehicles. I think we were taken out there in suburban type vehicles, and we went out to the radar site, and they said, you're going to be testing the aircraft on testing the radar on special aircraft. And so they didn't tell us what the aircraft were, but the radar that we worked on was a surface-to-air missile anti-aircraft artillery radar. So we went out there, we ran up the radar, and we tried to track these craft, and they couldn't be tracked. I mean, it was just crazy, because we didn't know that we were trying to track extraterrestrial craft when we were in the radar van. It was just kind of, it was crazy what we were seeing on the scopes. We just didn't really quite get it, because it was like one thing, we'd get a target in one area of the scope, and then it would disappear. We'd get a lock on it, and then it would just disappear, and it would reappear someplace else. And so this was nuts, and we couldn't track them. And so when we were done with the test, we were herded out of the radar van. We were standing on a deck that was built onto the radar van, and we were looking in the sky, and we saw what we had been trying to track, and there were about 9, maybe more, saucers floating in the sky that night. The reason I'm not sure is because I was really focused on the one that was closest. I thought, well, I can't really scope out the ones that are further away, but this one that was kind of close to the radar site, I was trying to drink in every detail of that. Mm-hmm. And there wasn't a lot of detail. It was very smooth. I was seeing it mostly from the bottom, and it was glowing orange on the bottom. There was a little circular feature in the center of the bottom, and I was looking at it, and I would have been just in awe and wonder, but because of the situation, I was terrified that I was seeing this, because I'm thinking, I only have a secret security clearance. Why the hell am I seeing this? Mm-hmm. This has got to be more highly classified than secret. So I was really scared, and I didn't know what was going to happen to me. And people out there that know about the security classifications in the military will understand.
Right. And you were pretty young, too. You were
yes,
young.
24, 25 years old, 25, yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. And can you elaborate a little bit more? I mean, you remember some of the details of the craft, but do you think it was ours engineered, or do you get the sense it was more of an off-world technology?
Well, I think the one that I was looking at, I would say it was more of an off-world craft, because it was very sleek. It was like, instead of, how sheet metal is, this was more like metal skin. It seemed very thin. I mean, you could see the light glowing underneath through the metal skin, and it just seemed like it was probably an ET craft. But I suspect that there were other craft out that night that were back engineered craft.
Right. And did you see any beings in the craft or around the craft at all?
No, I did not.
Okay. Yeah, and how many other people were involved in that sighting?
There were 2 other radar operators with me that night. There were 3 of us altogether. And then there were officers that were kind of in charge of the test, but they weren't having much to do with us. Okay.
And have any of those guys come forward at all, or no?
Not to my knowledge. We were forbidden to speak to each other, and since the people that were controlling us had guns, And they looked like they weren't going to hesitate to use them on us if we didn't do it what we were told. So we definitely did what we were told.
Right. Yeah, it's understandable on that one. And do you have any idea where the location was?
The location was the Tonopah Electronic Warfare Range.
Okay. So you do remember that?
Combat. Yeah.
Okay. That's really incredible. And what was the most terrifying aspect of it? Was it just the fact that you were under that type of guns and what was the biggest thing?
Just being hauled out there at gunpoint, and that was terrifying. I mean, that definitely impressed upon us the seriousness of the situation, and that we had to really do what we were told. And then the worst part of it came later when we were put on a bus and we were taken someplace that was either Area 51 or it could have been the underground facility at Tonopah that was talked about by William Pollack in his interview after his death with Stephen Greer. So we went to this facility. We were in a bus with painted over windows. And when we got off the bus, we were herded into this medical facility, not quite a hospital, more like a medical dispensary. And we were sat down in a waiting room with the lights off, and there was a little room to the side. Nobody's talking, nobody's looking at each other, nobody is saying anything. The lights were off in the waiting room, and I'm guessing that was to help disguise anything that we might recognize or recall later. It just seemed like at every stage they were doing things to try to make sure that we didn't see anything extra that would, help our memory be there. So then one by one we got called into this little side room, and when it was my turn to go in there, I was told to lay down on a stainless steel examining table. Didn't have to take any clothes off, thank God. And there was a security guard in the room there with a sidearm standing at parade rest. He was standing kind of at the foot of this stainless steel table. And I laid there for a while, just scared to death, not sure what was going to happen to me. Then some guy came in a white lab coat and said, "Stay calm," 3 times in a real deadpan voice. And when he came up beside the right side of my head, he came up with a needle, a hypodermic needle, and he stuck me in the right side of the neck, and this chemical went straight to the brain, and it was put my body into shock. And then after, my body's like in shock from this injection. And then 2 security guards appeared on either side of me, were dragging me off that table and down a very long flight of stairs. At the bottom of the stairs, I was thrown into this little room or booth with like a single light bulb up in one corner sticking out of the wall. And it was like a one-way glass where it was mirror on my side, but I was guessing that they could probably see me from the other side. And I laid there on the floor, and I went through the effects of that injection. And I have something new to add here. I just saw the movie Lucy.
Okay.
And I don't know if you've seen it.
I haven't. Everybody keeps telling me to go see it, but after where I've come from, it's kind of like, So
there's a scene where she's on an airplane and she goes into the bathroom on the airplane and locks herself in because the chemical or the drug that was put inside of her was leaking, and she was starting to go through these changes. And it was making her come apart. And that's part of what happened with my injection. I felt like I was going to turn into soda pop fizz or beer foam and just run down a drain. I mean, I didn't know what was going to happen to me. I just had this terrible tingling all over my body, like really intense Novocaine. And I just felt like I was coming apart. And that's exactly what happened on that airplane scene in Lucy, except she was like flying apart.
Right.
It's like it looked like all of her molecules were just flying apart.
Yeah.
But it was still similar enough that it was very triggering.
That's interesting. Yeah, I call it atomic acceleration. Well, at least what I went through was that same feeling of being shot out of a cannon. When you first get pulled into the communication system, it's unbelievable. But yeah, for people who've never been there, I mean, it's so hard to describe. But I will say that obviously Hollywood is always there trying to, kind of showcase the technology discreetly, which they do. And they're really getting into it now more and more so, I would say. But that's incredible detail you have now. All of that is from going under hypnosis?
Yeah.
Amazing. Really
and they tried, Bud actually, he would throw in like really off the wall or, different suggestions to try to see if I would stay with what I was reporting. And I always went away from his suggestions and went right back to what I was experiencing under hypnosis.
Wow.
So he was not able to lead me away from it.
Right. And how many sessions did you go through?
With Bud, I just went through the one because he lives back east and I was in Las Vegas. Then I had 2 sessions in one weekend with Gloria Hawker, and those sessions filled in a little more details. And the sessions are in my book, almost in their completion. I put almost all the whole transcripts from Gloria Hawker in the book. The ones from Bud I couldn't really do because the quality of the tape was really bad, and I just couldn't get transcripts from it. But the transcripts from Gloria Hawker, the 2 sessions I did with Gloria Hawker, are in my book. They're there for experiencers, and they're there for researchers that really want to take a look through my particular lens at this phenomenon.
Right. Yeah, it's amazing. And obviously it sounds like they did some kind of an erasure on you originally, but you also you were able to access the memories. So what has that done for you now? I mean, were you able to remove those screen memories?
Yeah, I mean, now it's like more and more of the real memories coming back. And I had something happen at the Super Soldier Summit. And I think I walked up to you the morning that it happened and showed you that little bruise right in the crease of my left eye, close to the inner corner. And I went under hypnosis with the Dolores Cannon method with a friend. I have some from friends. We trade sessions now. And they said that when we got into the interview with the subconscious, the information that came out of that was that they had some little round instrument that they had stuck, like I was picked up and taken on Saturday night, and I was exhausted all day Sunday. All day Sunday. In fact, I had to go take a nap before my presentation, I think. So I was just exhausted the whole day. But anyway, when I went under hypnosis and asked about what happened, it came out under hypnosis that they had stuck an instrument in my eye there, between my eyeball and between the bone of my head, my skull. And they were trying to scan my brain. So they stuck this instrument in there to get past the bone and scan the brain because they were wondering about new neurological pathways that my mind is forming that are making more of my memory accessible.
And this was recently?
This was recently. This was right when we were together at the Mind Control Summit.
Right. Well, it seems like every time we have one of those summits, something weird happens, as you know, and so do I. So, well, I think it's safe to say we've been modified. I know I have. And insofar as yours go, do you feel you've been modified internally with some form of alien hardware?
I wouldn't rule it out, but I haven't had it intrude on me too much. I think I'm also an ET experiencer, but the ETs were never as brutal to me as the military was. Right. The covert ops.
Right. What year did that start? That was when you were young, correct?
Oh, yeah. That happened. I think it probably was happening since birth, but, my memories of it started under hypnosis at age 4. So it was age 4 and then onwards. And, I lived in this crazy, dysfunctional alcoholic home. And so there was a lot going on during the day and during the waking hours to take up your time and attention. So nighttime hours was like a whole different thing. Right.
Yeah. Well, I do notice the pattern. There's always a pattern with the experiencers or contactees, abductees, whatever you want to call them. There is always a tracking system pertaining to covert intelligence. I mean, they're constantly tracking contactee. I mean, that's protocol apparently. And for that, I mean, it's easy for me to assess this because every time I ask somebody about where they've been as an experiencer, they'll always tell me they've had an original contact with a positive species, whether that's whatever species it is. It's always a positive thing. And then all of a sudden things turn dark and distorted when they get involved with the what we call MyLabs, where it's more militarized and, of course, weaponized. So I found that very interesting as a pattern itself.
Yeah. Well, another dot that connected for me when I wrote my book was that just before going in the military, like within the year, I think, before going in the military, I was camping out in Pennsylvania at a place called Warren Light Center. And I had a dream while I was camping there that I don't think was a dream at all. It was extremely vivid. And when I woke up, I had a diagram, a general basic diagram of how ET craft work, how a saucer-shaped craft would work. And it was like a circle, and then there were 4 like donut-shaped, like a torus, like a metal torus. There were 6 of them in the diagram around the edge of the saucer, around the outer edge, and then in the center there was like a extremely sophisticated computer, and there was a chair. And when you sat in the chair would begin to take neurological information from your body, and then you could actually think to the craft to get it to fly.
That makes sense.
And it would generate. It was really fascinating because I realized that when I would think, the computer would take my thoughts, and it would in turn generate a field in those tori, I guess I'll say, and it would generate a field that would cause it to repel off the Earth at the point where it was, and then it would continually correct the field to fly and move and do all the maneuvers that it would do, and it would do it extremely fast.
Right, it's like remote piloting. Well, that reminds me of Montauk a little bit in the trip chairs. Very similar to some degree. That's really... Go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, I was just going to say that, that's exactly the kind of thing that people who are doing back engineering on ET craft, that's exactly the kind of thing they would want. So if they were monitoring my abductions and they knew that I had that, then that probably made me a pretty desired commodity to have come into the Air Force so that they could get their hands on me.
Yeah, you were already wired for it, so to speak.
Yeah,
makes perfect sense. And of course, they've been working on that Montauk. I mean, all of that technology has been around for a very long time in the black programs that nobody talks about.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks it's a conspiracy and this and that, when in fact it's actually a technological advancement. What's really interesting, I don't know if you saw, there was an article I just saw about synthetic telepathy now. They're trying to promote that through checking your emails through synthetic telepathy. And I'm thinking to myself, the torturous avenues some of us have been through with this technology that still have anomalies, like myself. And then they're promoting it like it's fun and games. And it just, I'll tell you what, it really kind of bugs me.
Well, that's something that you and I should have a talk about at length sometime, about the difference between real telepathy and synthetic.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I wrote about it in my book, The Remote Black Operations and Areas Beyond 52. But anytime you want to discuss that, because a lot of people just don't get it. And of course, the information's out there. There's no reason these days for people not to understand what we're talking about. And that's the good side of it. There are enough of us out here right now that are really communicating the truth to a point where if you don't know what we're talking about, then it's nobody's fault but your own. And I don't say this with me, with a mean kind of end to it, but it's really, it's like, there's just no excuses. Educate yourselves. Go in there, roll up your sleeves. If you're not a test pilot for the technology, thank yourself that you're not. Because a lot of us don't get through these things, and you did, and I applaud you for that, and myself too, because literally I should have been dead years ago. So it's don't get me started on that stuff. But
I know.
But you come a long way, as they say, and that's nothing to frown about. I'll tell you what.
Yeah.
You should be really pleased with yourself, actually. And you actually did do the work, and you went through and had what you needed to do to remove some of those things that were, I guess, haunting you to some degree when it comes to screen memories.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And, I'm kind of the same way. If somebody comes up to me and wants to argue with me about whether ETs are real and whether all this weird stuff is real or not, I just look at them and say, until you really educate yourself, there is no way in hell that we can have an intelligent conversation about this subject.
Yep, absolutely. Well, and I try to break it down for them. Everything is energy and consciousness, and with that comes everything and anything. Anything is possible. especially if you have unlimited funds and black technology. So that's where I leave it. And it's up to the people to dive in there if they so choose. But you know what I see? I see it bleeding through into today's society one way or another. Yeah. And there's a calibration for this. But what I also see is that people are really starting to get into the fact, oh, wow, they want to be upgraded with artificial intelligence, and they think it's really cool. And I'm like, if you guys are part of that program, it's not cool. It's not cool when they drop your vitals and they have remote assassin programs. It's not cool when they take your memories away. It's not cool at all. So who knows what they're going to be doing with this technology. But from my personal experience, I do know that it's been weaponized and it's been used on a negative instead of the positive, which, of course, I'm pushing for the positive always. And I think you do, too.
Oh, yeah. You have to, because where we put our energy and attention is really important. And, and I want to differentiate that from a lot of what, there's, the certain New Age community does with that. It's they tend to stick their fingers in their ears and go, la, 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 la,
Fuzzy bubble.
Anything negative, la, 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 I can't hear you, And back when I first got on the spiritual path, years ago in my late teens and early 20s, I learned that you have to face your inner demons. You have to face the shadow to become enlightened. You have to face all the stuff that you're holding in your subconscious to become enlightened.
Right.
And this whole idea of, I would definitely say don't wallow in the negative and don't dwell on it. But I think you do have to face it, and you do have to move through your feelings and your fears of it, and then you're free.
Absolutely.
But if you stick your fingers in your ears and you do the la, la, la business, then basically you're saying to your own subconscious, all that shit that you have down in there, let it stay there. I don't want it to come out and spoil my sunny day.
Right. Yep. And so many people do that. They're so calibrated for it. Well, fear is an emotional block. That's the bottom line. And I think a lot of the time people would like to understand what we're talking about, but they get peer pressure and then they don't want to be labeled as something. Well, you got to think outside the box. I mean, that's the bottom line. And a lot of people, just because there's a mass collective doesn't mean they're all together and intelligent. And I'll tell you that point blank. As a matter of fact, it's very disappointing to know how many people are on this planet and how not up to speed they are.
Yeah. So, if you want to live a real life, then you have to face all of who you are. And if you want to have good results with your law of attraction, then you have to face the shadow material that's inside of you so that you conquer it, so that you move beyond it. And then you can really become a powerful manifester. But if that stuff is sitting in your subconscious and not being addressed, then it's going to sabotage your efforts to manifest the life you want.
So very true. Yeah, it's a polarization of two forces, And I always say people are a byproduct of their teachings and belief systems. And that's where belief systems can be very, very bad, because if they're taught the wrong thing, then they have all these false programs they need to start eliminating. And I'm not even talking mind control. I'm just talking, inaccurate data. And they have to flush all that out. A lot of people don't want to do that. The ego gets involved. A lot of other things get involved. And I think the best thing, actually, I think it has been a blessing in disguise for you to go through what you've been through, because you've been a phenomenal role model for so many people. And you're doing such wonderful work right now. So I really applaud you for that. And, like I said, I didn't want to go through what I went through, but I looking back now, I realize that it's really empowered me on so many levels.
Yeah, well, it's awakened you to a whole new level of reality, and there's no going back from that.
Nope.
And I think both of us, we would never want to go back.
No, I couldn't go back. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no way. I'm modified and I'm changed, and that's just the way it is. I just keep navigating forward, and I try to stay positive, and I know you do too. And that's pretty much all we can do. And I don't have a problem with anything being militarized or weaponized in support of getting the bad guys. I don't have a problem with that at all.
Right.
It's when they take innocent civilians and do things that are not appropriate. That's when I have a problem, and destroying people's lives. So there has to be some kind of a protocol and a little bit more professionalism, which I have addressed in the past, of course.
Yeah, that's one of the things I put in my book. If the National Security Act of 1947 was instituted to protect the United States and its citizens against various threats, then in the name of national security, why in the hell are they experimenting on the population that they're supposed to be protecting?
Right.
They're traumatizing people. They're experimenting on them. They're doing really horrific things to the population in the name of national security.
Right.
Well, whose national security are you protecting?
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, and who's been rolling up their sleeves to help, fight the good fight has been beings like us. You won't see them coming forward. So, I can once again applaud those of us who actually have come forward and are doing something to support this, because there's just too much abuse and misuse of technology. It has to balance. I suspect it will at some point. But yeah, you're completely right, Niara, completely.
Thank you.
On that one. Yeah, and once again, I'm really pleased to have you on the show tonight. It's really nice to talk with you. I understand where you're coming from, and I know you understand where I'm coming from. So yeah. So, and you were a radar tech. What was your position in the military?
Yeah, radar. There's the big sweep the sky radar, like air traffic control radar, and I've worked on that. I've worked with that one too, and that's a fun one to work with.
Nice.
I was like the mission controller in Idaho, and so I got to be the person to call up all the radar sites like I used to work on, and say, okay, we have incoming at such and such degree azimuth, elevation, and this range, and that was kind of fun. And then you work with the IFSIF systems, which IFF is identification friend or foe, and SIF is special identification feature. And I'm sure the technology has progressed light years from what it was when I was in.
Right.
But that was cool. And then the actual radar that I signed up for to work on was surface-to-air missile or anti-aircraft artillery radar. And that's actually a radar that targets with a very tiny, like they call it a pencil beam. So when you paint a target on an aircraft with that little tiny beam, that's like a targeting beam. And so if you target the aircraft with that beam and you manage to maintain the radar lock on the aircraft for 5 minutes or more, then it's considered a kill. And what we were doing was training pilots to fly against radar to increase their survivability in a wartime situation.
That would make sense too. And did you ever experiment with cloaking radar systems?
No, I didn't ever experience that.
Okay. And did you ever, these aren't screen memories I'm asking about, but when you were doing your job, did you ever notice anything like anomalies that were very unusual even then?
I didn't notice too much of it. I mean, we had some scary security briefings. And the only thing I remembered, especially outside of my hypnosis sessions, was I remembered one of my coworkers, and I had to work to get this memory back, I'll tell you. I had to work hard to get this back. But I did remember a brief conversation with another female enlistee, and we were kind of looking out over the desert on the radar range from the deck. And she waved her hand out there and she says, somewhere out there is this place called Dreamland, and I would love to know what they have there. And that was the first reference I had ever heard to Dreamland or Area 51.
Very interesting. Yeah. It makes you wonder where the division is between a regular dream and then a screen memory. A lot of people dream from day to day. I never really dream much, but a lot of people do dream. And it makes me wonder how many of them have been contacted and just don't realize it or are just saturated with screen memories. Yeah,
a really good book that really made a lot of sense for me was Lissa Royal's book, I think Preparing for Contact was the name of it. And it's really good. She talks about how when especially a positive ET or maybe even not a positive one, when they actually come towards you, it alters your brain waves and can put you to sleep.
Right.
Because their consciousness, they're using so much more of their brain, so much more of their consciousness, and they have these expanded abilities. So when they come into contact with us, then their energy field interacts with our energy field, and suddenly we get these different brain waves. Instead of being in beta, we suddenly go to alpha, then theta, and then delta, and we fall asleep in those states.
Right.
And then we have an experience with this ET in those brainwave states, and then we wake up and we think, wow, was that a dream or was that real? Right. It's very interesting, and it's really a great book.
Yeah, it sounds excellent. Well, that's where our multidimensional mastery comes into fruition, because it's all about frequency. I mean, the frequency, whether it's emanating from a psychic extraterrestrial or a craft or whatever it is, it's altering the dimensional space. The frequency is altering the dimensional space, and then, of course, altering one's consciousness. So it's fascinating. What a science it is. And that's what I am intrigued with. Even where I've been, I find that the mysteries behind frequency, consciousness, and science, the advanced sciences, is phenomenal. We can do anything. We really can. And that's why when I look and see what's going on in America and the world today, I'm like, what is going on here? Why are we heading towards the dark ages when we have all these capabilities that can just boot us up?
I know, yeah. And even, I don't know if you've looked into the solfeggio music or frequencies.
Mm-hmm, right, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I saw this little documentary on YouTube called Sonic Geometry. Was fabulous.
Mm-hmm.
Just a little short documentary about 30 minutes or so, 30 or 40 minutes. And it was just fabulous. And it mentioned that Hitler was the one that changed the frequency of music from 432 hertz per second to 440 hertz per second. So he actually took the healing energy of the 432 hertz that music had originally been at and changed it to something that was not healing at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So our music has been modified in such a way that when we listen to it, it doesn't really do that much for us.
Right. I think that makes perfect sense. People are more calibrated to the what I call the artificial frequency, I guess you could call it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's unfortunate on so many different levels. But yeah, they have been running interference, and what I call interference on the grid itself. We know with the pure energetics that people normally get. In the old days, I could go into these blissful modes through meditation, before my induction. And now, of course, I'm just calibrated like a machine. I mean, I don't feel. It's like I have a suit on all the time.
Wow.
And that's okay, I guess. But I am a very feeling empathic person, too, besides being really psychic. So it's very interesting when you see it and you're exposed to that sort of thing. But yeah, I believe music is a very healing thing when it's used properly, without a doubt. Yeah. Are you working with sound right now with your patients? And
no, but I'm going to try to, experiment with that a little bit with some friends, because I do have a beautiful singing voice. It's classically trained.
Nice.
And I never wanted to go into pop music because it just didn't feel good. It's like, blah, I don't want to do that. And then I discovered a few years ago my ability to tune in to the energy of a particular word and then sing something that just comes out spontaneously from the energy of the word. Like if I focus on the word serenity, for just a couple seconds, maybe 10, 20 seconds, then I'll let this beautiful music come out. This beautiful singing will come out that is keyed to that word, serenity. And it's really, really cool. So I'd like to see what could be done with healing. And then there was something I heard about called, I guess, psychic parasites that come out through the internet, like around the equinoxes and the solstices. They kind of come out at those times, because those are the times when everybody on Earth can experience at least a moment of unity consciousness. And so they want to scramble that. And so these psychic parasites are released through the internet and through cell phones and everything on the solstices and equinoxes to try to scramble that moment of unity consciousness.
Right. Well, I know there are lower astral entity type parasites that do feed off electricity.
Yeah.
And interdimensional types too. I mean, there's a lot of things that feed off of that, so it doesn't surprise me at all. And what comes to mind when you were talking about your singing is toning, obviously. And of course, toning. I mean, from going from the lower octaves to the higher octaves, that's a phenomenal healing. I guess
with the parasites, that's what I was thinking was that with the singing, I actually tuned in. I was trying to tune in to what is the tone that I could sing that would make these parasites, make them very uncomfortable and kind of repel them or send them away. And so I experimented with different tones, and I did hit one tone that was kind of shrill, and it was kind of intense. And when I sang it, I could feel that it was clearing the space.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah, the higher overtones usually do it, in my opinion. I've worked with that before. I call it boogie blasting.
Yeah, that's good. I like it.
Yeah, get rid of all those things that, gosh, there's so much saturating our atmosphere, but, at the same time, there's good things, too. So I do like to focus on that. Now, you were also a sergeant in the military Air Force, right?
Yeah, E4, Specialist 4, and then after a while, you get this little star, so you're a sergeant. So
did you ever notice a dream pool collective with other people in the military after you left the military? Did you ever notice kind of interconnecting with other people?
I didn't. I kind of, shied away from the military. I kept in touch with a couple of women that I knew in the military after I got out, but then, we kind of lost contact. Then when I got my memories back, I was actually afraid to try to reach out to anybody in the military because I thought, gosh, I don't know who I can trust or who I can't.
Right.
And I was just really scared I was actually really scared for a long time.
Yeah. So when you came forward, were you ever threatened or discouraged about communicating this information?
No, but I do think that they had I think they conditioned me to have almost like an armed security guard in my thoughts, in my head, because I felt scared and I felt like I was looking over my shoulder all the time. I was really paranoid after I got my memories back, because my first realization was, Jesus Christ, somebody went to a lot of trouble and a lot of hell on me personally to bury these memories. And if they've been monitoring me to make sure I don't get them back, now I have a chunk of memory back. And I was really scared about that. But as much as scared as I was also really just determined or driven to find out what the hell happened. What the hell happened to me? Why did it happen? And in what political and social context could this even happen in a country that I'd been brought up to think of as the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Right. Yeah.
What the hell is this about, And
it makes me wonder, too, how much of the personnel everywhere, I mean, anybody who's part of our military or obviously DC, whatever, is being controlled and manipulated.
Yeah.
They won't know. And, I did ask John Lear about that when he said, how would I know if I was being mind controlled? And I thought that was a very good point.
It is.
Yeah, how would he know? Well, unless you're really like a smart bomb like me. I mean, I was very aware when they were trying to program me, but, that's just like a 1,000,000 to 1 shot on that one. But do you remember your handlers very clearly?
I remember one pretty clearly enough that if I was to work with a forensic artist, I could probably get a pretty good likeness.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Part of the military or no?
I don't think he was regular military. I think he was like a government contract military security, like covert ops.
Right.
And he had blonde, wavy hair, very ice cold blue eyes. I think he had a blonde mustache, and he was like a psychopath. He really got off on hurting people.
A lot of people are like that. They're weird.
Yeah.
I understand defense. I don't have a problem taking people down who are trying to kill me or, obviously in a situation. But it's these weirdos, these psychotics that get into torturing and hurting people. It's like, what is going on? I would never pull somebody into the military who was functioning like that.
Yeah, I know. And I think that they keep these people around. I mean, if they were out in regular society, they'd probably wind up in prison.
Oh, absolutely.
But, they keep them in the military because they like to hurt people and they don't have any conscience.
Right.
And this kind of leads me to another thing, because I've been looking at the question of narcissism and the psychopathic personality disorders, like sociopath or antisocial personality disorder is another name for that. And then narcissists, which I consider to be the most dangerous because they're so charming when you first meet them. They're so charismatic. But then the flip side of that is once they have you drawn in, you're screwed. I mean, these people will just destroy you if they want to. And they're really, really horrible people. And I've been looking at this, and it just seems like there's such an explosion of narcissism in our society over the last 10, 15 years that I've thought, this can't be normal. I just don't think this is normal. Is it our society is creating psychopaths because it's so screwed up, or what's really going on? But I suspect that there is extra-dimensional interference, and that's why I've been doing so much research on archons. And, I'm just kind of getting into that after finishing my book, and I'll be doing more writing about that in the future. But I really think that these other dimensional entities or parasites, they attach to someone, and if someone is already disposed to be a certain type of individual, then they can take and push those characteristics even more until they basically have control of that person and their behavior.
Right.
And I think that that's why we're seeing all this narcissism and all these psychopathic symptoms throughout our society.
Right. Yeah, I think it does. It boils down to no connection to source when you think about it. But a lot of the what I call the astral body has been shattered now, whether that's through drugs, alcohol abuse, or just a bad lifestyle in general. I mean, all of that can open you up to lower astral entities, disembodied spirits, and of course a takeover to some degree with these type of archons and other things. And yet we also have the mind control, which of course we use with the psychotronics, which can be deployed by frequency and also hijack So you've got a whole different array system of things that are happening that can take a person over, program a person. And when you look at the mass collective, who are their role models? Television? Are you kidding? I mean, there's everybody in politics right now is a liar. Who can they trust? Who can they respect? I mean, honestly, who are the role models here in the United States or across the world? So I look at it like that, and I say to myself, it's people like us that are role models. And I'm not saying this with arrogance, but I'm saying we're the ones standing up right now. We're the ones that are being counted in truth, not anybody else.
Yeah. And I would say that, excuse me a minute.
Yeah, can you need some water?
I would say the best thing, no, I'll get it in a minute.
Okay.
What I was going to say was one of the best things people could do to start to deprogram from, the matrix is to turn off their television.
Absolutely.
Turn off your television, get rid of cable, get rid of satellite, whatever you got piping into your house. If you go to a sports bar to watch your games, if you have to, but I would just turn off the TV, and I would not even have the signal brought into my house anymore.
Mm-hmm. What comes to mind is, was it Poltergeist in the end where they put the television in the hallway?
I think so. Yeah.
That's so funny because it's so true. I mean, in a weird way, and it's no paranoia at all, but literally, I mean, you're dealing with something that hijacks a signal. And of course, the signal in the brain. Now, that's even more bizarro, but it does happen. I mean, they're hacking into people's brains.
Exactly. Right down to the hypnotic flicker on the screen.
Yep, you bet. And you were discussing this at the Mind Control Summit. Now, I know you spoke a little bit about some of the movies. Was it, which one did you mention that I thought was really interesting? I think it was The Wizard of Oz, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think
I mentioned about that. I was wondering if you can elaborate a little bit on the movies and your impression of how the movies are influencing the masses.
Well, I mentioned The Wizard of Oz because some of the things I've heard from Illuminati defectors is that the Illuminati or these elites or whatever that are trying to control all of us is they will put things in movies. It's kind of like they have these rules of engagement, like they're allowed to do certain this and do this, and so they put things in movies that basically like. Some of the science fiction movies that come out, they put stuff in it that they're really doing in covert ops situations. Mm-hmm, right. So it's like a form of soft disclosure in one sense. But they also think that if the Illuminatis are behind making these films, they think that by putting that out there, they're actually sort of putting... it's sort of a request of permission from the population that's watching the movies that it's okay that they do this. Mm-hmm. And so the population watching the movies is thinking, oh, we're just seeing a movie. It's just entertainment. Right. But to the Illuminati, it's like, well, if they're not raising hell about what they see in this movie, then that's implicit permission to go ahead and do what we're doing.
Right. That's agreement, like a contract.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that escape clause that I saw in, in Wizard of Oz was basically when Glenda the Good comes to Dorothy and the wizard has just taken off in his balloon and she's thinking, I'm never going to get back to Kansas. And the good witch comes and she says, but my dear, you've always had the power to go back to Kansas from the beginning. Mm-hmm. All you have to do is think to yourself, there's no place like home. So that's intention via the law of attraction. Mm-hmm. There's no place like home. And then click the heels together of those ruby slippers 3 times. And so she does that and she's magically transported back to Kansas. So that basically to me was kind of the Illuminati saying, well, there is this thing out there like the law of attraction and you can use it to, expand your consciousness and start being able to do things and go places that you wouldn't ordinarily be able to go. Mm-hmm. So it was almost like an escape clause in that movie. Well,
and it's all about consciousness. Once again, any way you look at it, it's all about how we manifest our reality and who we give our power to. Now, the majority of people on this planet are delegating their power to people who are irresponsible, who are not respectable. I mean, literally, things need to change. And of course, if you look into the legal system, if people really understood how the legal system worked, they would be having riots in the street. I kid you not. You understand about the contracts in the legal system and how everything is a contract, man. They don't even understand the language of attorneys or lawyers. And I'm like, the more I know about stuff, stuff, the more I'm just like, whoa, what kind of false reality is
I know.
this?
Our legal system is based on victimhood and keeping people victims and going into court and proving who is the biggest victim, and then the biggest victim who wins gets the settlement. And the thing is it's really screwy, because basically, as living beings of consciousness, we should be taking full responsibility for our lives. And if we don't get out of victim, I mean, yes, bad things happen to you, bad things happen to me, but we're stepping up now and taking responsibility, and we're taking those experiences and doing something good with it. You know, and that's what we really need to do. We've got to get out of victim mentality, and our whole society is set up for victims and victimization and keeping people thinking like victims.
Right, and keeping them weak, yeah.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. And you know what's interesting, now you did suffer from post-traumatic stress, correct?
Yeah, I still
You still do?
have it a
You
little.
seem pretty good. You seem pretty solid now.
I'm like Ram Dass. Ram Dass gave me a good clue. He said in all his years of spiritual work, he didn't lose one single neuroses. But what he did do was he got to know them really, really well. So I thought, but I'm going to get to know my PTSD really, really well. So I know when something is triggering me, and I know what to do about it. Sometimes I have to take a time out. But, you know, I know it really well. And so I don't have much problem with it anymore, but it still is in there, because my downstairs neighbor slams her door when she comes and goes from her place. And I've asked her not to do it, but she still does it. And one day I was up on the ladder changing a light bulb, and wham, the door slammed, and I had my PTSD startle reaction, and I nearly fell off the ladder.
Oh, wow.
I came so close to falling off that ladder. So, I mean, that's some of the little ways it still affects me.
Right. You know, it's interesting. I was a little sketchy for a couple of years after my induction, and I wouldn't sleep at all. Sleep was just not happening. So I do understand to some degree where you're coming from. Now, we have a lot of people in the military who are coming back now, and they have post-traumatic stress. And I've heard that DARPA is also talking about a chip to assist in healing combat soldiers. And of course, we all know what those brain chips do now, don't we? So what is your impression?
I would never take on a chip willingly. Not ever.
Well, after where I've been with the interface, I can tell you it can go both ways. So it depends. You have to really trust the people that are involved in this technology, big time.
Yeah, well, you'd have to really trust them, and I'm not sure. I'd have to be really strongly feeling that I could trust somebody. Right. Before I let them put any chip in me.
Totally. Well, you know, they use the Tesla coils. Now, this is a nice form of assisting people with psychological trauma, but the Tesla coils, they call it the quantum pulse machine, and I've used this machine. It's literally broadcasting at the cellular level. It broadcasts a frequency which actually detoxifies and removes trauma through frequency. There's no verbiage. There's no, you don't go through any type of hypnosis. It's just literally detoxing and regenerating you at the cellular level. And a lot of people have had really good results with that. So that's what I'm looking at. If people really want some healing, I think frequency is the way. But I don't like the idea of people playing Dr. God with a chip.
No, me either.
I mean, yeah.
My concern with the chip is if it's metal in any way, if it's influenced electronically in any way, I think there's a big potential for mischief. And I think there's also a big potential for non-human, like those parasites I was talking about. There's a big potential for them to get into the act and start manipulating that technology in our body.
Right. Well, you're also dealing with an aspect of artificial intelligence, which I know very, very well.
Yeah.
And when you're dealing with that, you're dealing with programs and programmers and controllers and people that are behind the scenes that have designed something that's literally disabling you to some degree on a lot of different levels. I mean, this reminds me of that movie Total Recall. Remember?
Yes,
just
I
like
remember that.
I mean, that was Philip K. Dick. And once again, Philip K. Dick was spot on with all of his data. If anybody really wants to know about mind control and psychotronic warfare, take a good look at his work. Yeah. He was just amazing. And of course, he was a little paranoid too. They called him a paranoid schizophrenic, but he wasn't. He was being tracked and stalked by government.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's really fascinating. Well, I do want to talk about the ETs now, the supportive extraterrestrial or whatever influence you want to call them. Now, do they ever or have they ever intercepted on your behalf to shield you from some of these MyLabs?
I think in some ways they did. And, this is, not something that, people have to believe. But I had hypnosis with Mary Rodwell in 2010. And what I had was an experience where I went back to the ship where the people the ETs that I'm connected to, which are the Lyrans, I went back to their ship, and the commander of that ship took me on a trip to the moon of the past when I was there. And he showed me an exchange, and we didn't get into talking about the moon in this interview, so I can fill that in a few minutes.
Okay.
But this exchange that he showed me on the moon was taking place between one of the superior officers who was in charge of my time being on the moon and an extraterrestrial that was living in his particular base on the moon. And this was a very tall, slender, pale extraterrestrial, similar maybe to the tall whites that Charles Hall talks about.
Right.
And this ET was communicating to this officer about me, and he was saying, "You have no idea who you have there. Do you realize that everything you're doing to her gets reported back to her people?"
Very nice.
And that was the time when I think that they thought kind of like, oh shit, and they took me back to Earth. They wiped my memory, and that at that point I was essentially mostly out of the program.
That's very interesting.
And I say mostly because I still think that they look at my blood work from time to time, maybe checking for markers from the injections.
Right.
If it's still in my blood, if it still could be doing anything with me.
Right, and your DNA is probably altered to some degree. Now, that's all cellular memory, too. Regardless of what happens to us and how we get pulled into these underground programs, we always have cellular recall. And that's something they can't tamper with. They can try and erase and put screen memories, but the bottom line is that's a universal thing. And they can't manipulate that a whole lot. So that's a good sign.
It's cellular, and it's also in our energy field.
Absolutely.
You know, Barbara Brennan, who used to be a physicist for NASA, she recovered her ability to do energy healing and to see the human aura. And she could see the aura in a lot of detail. And she could actually see people's memories playing out in their aura.
I really liked her. Yeah, I remember her book, Hands of Light, was it?
Yes.
Oh, I love that book. That was one of the first books I really got into. Yeah, she's great.
Me too.
Isn't that funny? Well, that's my background. I mean, I was into the healing arts and doing healing work before I was tagged with the communication system. So that changed me forever, the whole thing.
So that's something else we share. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I know you and I have a lot of similarities here. So, and of course, we're in the same kind of area too now on the map, aren't we?
Yeah, we are.
Without giving you away for sure. But I do want to talk a little bit about you did have. Well, you elaborated a little bit on some of your experience with the moon, but you actually did some missions on the moon in the covert program. Is that correct? Yeah.
I was taken there. Try to make this long story, brief. But I was taken to a hangar. I was given these very shapeless silver clothes to put on, but when I put them on, they form fit themselves to me like a vacuum pack kind of thing. And there were boots and gloves, and I remember putting the boots on and carrying the gloves. Then I climbed this ladder into this saucer-shaped craft underneath, and when I got on board, I was told to lay in a certain section of the floor. And my impression was, well, God, I'm kind of being shipped there like cargo. I'm not even allowed to have a chair. I have to lay on the floor. So I had to lay on the floor. The flight to the moon took, I think, 20 or 30 minutes, but there was a lot of distortion time-wise in that flight, so I can't be sure exactly how long it took, but it didn't seem like it took very long. And so then when I got there, I was told to walk from the craft to a building, and I'm walking, and my whole mind is in chaos because I'm thinking, Jesus, I'm really on the moon, and I can breathe, and I wasn't allowed to look around or anything. They just said to look straight ahead. But I remember looking up with, just rolling my eyes up to kind of look and see, is there a dome up there that's keeping air inside, or is there air on the moon? And I couldn't quite figure it out. And so I got into the building, and that was one thing that I could never figure out. But my time on the moon was pretty horrific. I was worked very hard during the day. I was not allowed to sleep much. And I was also had more sexual assault that happened during the nights.
That's horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was that by personnel, or was that off-world beings?
It was basically humans that live and work in those bases on the moon.
Okay.
And I don't think that there are huge numbers of women up there. And so they bring somebody up there and they say, okay, you can do what you want, but don't leave any marks.
Yeah, it's just no good.
Yeah.
Well, they can be very devious, I'll tell you what. You'd be surprised at what they can do with covert technology to intrude in someone's bedroom at night. Male or female, by the way. It's not just women. Male too get it. So anyways, with that being said, we're going to head for a break real quick. Stay tuned, everybody. Right back. Welcome back, everybody, to Hyperspace on Dark Matter Radio Network. I'm your host, Solaris BlueRaven, and I'm here with my very special guest, Niara Isley. And Niara, can you let everybody know how to get in touch with you if they'd like to contact you?
Sure. If you want to get in touch with me, my email is gaiatribe.niara@gmail.com, and my websites are facingtheshadowembracingthelight.com and encounterswithhealing.com.
Excellent. Yeah, and I would like to talk a little bit more about your book. So what are some good points you'd like to relay to the audience insofar as dealing with stressful abduction cases in general or trauma?
Well, probably the first thing is, I would say, is feel your feelings about it. You know, don't suppress them, don't push them away, don't make yourself too busy to feel them, because they're there to help you heal. And sometimes it's very difficult. Like grief can feel like an ocean of sadness that's just going to swallow you up. But if you just go through it, you're going to feel a whole lot better once you come out the other side. So I would say feel your feelings as much as possible to completion. There are some very good modalities out there for trauma recovery. One is the TRE, the Trauma Releasing Exercises, developed by David Berselli. Still working on my certification there, and I hope I'm able to complete it. And then EFT, which is called Emotional Freedom Technique, or it's also called meridian tapping or energy tapping, or just tapping. And basically that taps on acupressure points on your face and body while saying certain things. So basically you would do a setup statement like, even though I've had these horrible experiences that have really traumatized me and have really altered the course of my life, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. So you would say a statement like that about 3 times while tapping on the karate chop point on your hand. And then you go to tapping the points on the face while saying certain phrases. And the nice thing about EFT is that it deals with facing the negative and using the negative to get to the positive. So it kind of helps you face that shadow within so that you can move through it and then be free of it.
Right.
You know, it's not about pushing it away or suppressing. It's about moving through it and becoming free.
Right. Well, I think a lot of people, what they can't accept on the conscious level, they'll shove into their subconscious.
Yes.
And of course, that's where denial comes in. But it surfaces in one form or another, and sometimes it can come out as an illness too. So literally, it's good to get these things cleared out and flushed out. And of course, I think it's all about reprogramming the mind.
Yes.
On a positive level and using positive affirmations. I know I've done that, and that to me is like one of the best things you can possibly do is to rewrite and reaffirm on a positive level. So it's really
for
good.
sure.
Yeah. Your book.
So those are some tools, and other tools that I use with clients are helping them, because sometimes feelings are too big and too scary to handle on your own. And so when I work with a client, that's one of the things I do is I help them to be with the process and be a safe person to help guide them through it and keep them focused on the different sensations in their body. Because when I was healing and I worked with a body-centered therapist, that's what she did for me. She helped keep me focused on the sensations I was feeling in my body. And as I reported on them, they would move to a new area of the body. then I'd tell the truth about what was happening in that new area. Then it would move somewhere else. And then finally it just moved out.
Nice.
And was gone.
Yeah, that's good. Well, sometimes they flow along the meridians too. I'm sure you're familiar with that as well. And I love doing meridian healing because there's so many areas where it can get, jammed, and you have to kind of flush all that out. But yeah, I'm a firm believer in that type of healing. Without a doubt, I think that's really an ancient way of doing things and resolving a lot of things that are in our multidimensional bodies. Yeah, without a doubt.
And I would say one thing, going public is not an easy thing. But I have to say that since I went public, I feel like I have better and truer friends than I've ever had. And the fair weather friends have fallen to the sideline.
Right.
And I'm more in tune with who I really am. And that is a really wonderful thing. And I wouldn't change any part of that.
Yeah, I think in rough times you know who your friends are. Isn't that the truth?
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
You know what's funny? When I came out and forward, I didn't realize, it didn't even occur to me what I was doing insofar as, you can't do that. I was like, of course I can. I never thought of it as anything other than telling the truth. And, to me, it wasn't like a big deal. However, it was like, oh my gosh, you get the trolls and the attacks and all that garbage. But I mean, obviously I have no regrets of telling the truth, but then you wonder, are people worthy of the truth? And I've been struggling with that. I have to tell you, Niara, I've been struggling with are people really worthy to know the truth? Because sometimes they just don't respect it. So
I think one of the things I've been listening to recently, which I'm finding just fascinating, is Andrew Bartzis.
Oh, yeah.
Galactic historian. And some of the things that he's said about that have been really amazing. So
yeah, I've heard Andrew a few times. Yeah, he's pretty knowledgeable about a lot of different things, and of course he sees through a different lens. He sees through the multidimensional lens. Yeah. And that's a good way to look at life. That's actually the way we're all supposed to look at life, but unfortunately sometimes that doesn't happen. But coming from the summits and all the work that you've done, being there and presenting this information, do you think it has actually had a positive impact on the masses?
Yeah, I think it's having an impact. I guess now I'm remembering why I brought up Andrew is he talks about the fact that a lot of very more low-frequency souls have been purposely attracted and brought to Earth. So not only do we have a dumbed-down population, but there have been a lot of souls attracted to Earth in probably the last 50 or 60 years that are not very high consciousness oriented. So they're born, they do their job, and so on and so forth, and they're not too conscious, and they're and because of the educational system being so severely compromised in this world, people are really dumbed down. And so it's hard to, I don't know, it's just, for me, it seems like the division between people who care about education and knowledge and really make an effort to educate themselves really well, and then the other people that just could care less. They just want to drink their beer and watch their games, and they don't really want to think about anything deep or important.
Well, I think they're afraid to. I think they're afraid to look into that mirror or that lens. That's a very intimidating energy. When you start seeing the truth of things, you can't go back, and you and I know that, but it changes you forever, and it changes your life, and sometimes the people you associate with fall away, and that includes relationships or whatever. I mean, I don't have to tell you this, but literally it will change your life. It's a game changer, and I don't blame anybody for wanting to escape into La La Land and just have fun and enjoy. I didn't have that option. And I don't think you did either. I mean, we did not have a choice. I
didn't have a choice,
No.
And that's the other thing, that I may do a YouTube on this, and I don't know how it'll land for people, but when the analogy that I use in my book is the one of little children, back in maybe in the 40s and the 50s, if they were being sexually molested and they tried to tell their mother or some adult what was happening to them, that they were being hurt and they were scared, oftentimes they had their mouthwash out with soap, and they were put in a corner or timed out in a closet or something, because how could they say something so terrible about Uncle so and so or Grandpa so and so? They were punished for telling the truth. And so when whistleblowers come out and talk about severe abuse that they've been through, oftentimes they're treated by society in a very similar fashion.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to hear what you have to say. I just can't believe that. It's too fantastic. It's too cruel. People can't be that cruel in reality. I get all these stories, and it kind of, it leaves people like us feeling like, well, we're just out on the fringe, and we're not really welcome in mainstream society because the things that have happened to us are just too intense for people to understand or even believe.
Mm-hmm. Yet they'll watch a movie about it, right?
Yet they'll watch a movie about it.
Yeah, that's what's so infuriating.
It is. It's infuriating.
Yeah, because it's like they're in denial. They won't listen to the truth, but they'll go in and they'll see something almost identical to the scenario. And of course, if it's relayed that way, it's okay, right?
And a lot of these people think of themselves as really, really good people that would never wash a child's mouth out with soap for reporting on being molested. But yet they will push people like us out of their social circles because they can't handle what's happened to us. And if we're there and they know what's happened to us, we're a reminder of it.
Right. Yeah. They compromise the witness without a doubt. And of course, when you look at these other testimonies too, and other military personnel who've come forward, I mean, they either get threatened to some degree. There's always something that pushes them out of their of the mainstream arena to a point where, it's rough. It's not an easy thing to do. Although a lot of us for me, it was a no-brainer to come forward and tell the truth. I just had to do it. But I can see a lot of people probably getting nervous if they have family and whatever. I don't blame them for that. I really don't. But I think that there's so much deception and lying going on here and around the world that it's getting to the point where it's been so destructive and it's destroyed so many people's lives that it's just inexcusable. And it's nothing short of a war crime. Yeah. Literally. I mean, you've taken out, not you, but literally they've taken out quite a few people's lives. And those of us who survive don't fare very well down the road. Yeah. So, it's really wild for sure. But I am glad you are here tonight. I really appreciate you being here. Now, you said your father was in the military?
Yeah, my father was in the Army. Okay. He was in World War II in the Philippines.
Okay. So do you think that he was abducted too or contacted?
I do.
You do?
Yeah,
so it's in a family? Okay.
Yeah, generational.
Right, yeah, that usually happens. So I'm not surprised to hear that at all. That's interesting. Did you say World War II?
Yeah, he was in World War II.
Okay, yeah, that's interesting.
He had a very rough time, I know that. He was one of the guys that came back and never told war stories.
Really?
He never said a word about the war. And I know he was severely traumatized.
I can only imagine, yeah. And that's what's so sad. I mean, everybody goes out and they fight for this country, for our freedom, and they don't understand that there's things that are being played out that are using them as pawns on the chessboard, and that's heartbreaking when you think about it. It really is. And then they come back with all sorts of problems and stress, and you see all this garbage going on in the Middle East right now. I mean, these guys are out of control out there.
They are.
And it's like, what are we doing? I mean, literally, if it were me, I would turn it to glass, honestly. But without getting too political, I'm serious. I wouldn't put up with that for 2 seconds. But a lot of, what is this complacency? You have to ask yourself, too, and I think that's part of the conditioning and the programming involved. There's too much complacency revolving around crime and obscene behavior.
I think the reason the Middle East is so contested is I think that there is some very powerful ancient technology in that area that is that people are scrambling to get control of, like stargates.
Yeah. I've heard that also. I think there's something regurgitating there insofar. I agree with you on that. I mean, I think there's some energetics there that are extremely powerful, but they're not able to hold the light or run the light for it, which in turn creates this chaos in motion. But you have to ask, I mean, it takes a real evil person to do the dirty deeds they're doing out there also. And just to not have any respect for life and just to think it's okay to slit somebody's throat and make a mockery of things. There's something wrong with that. There's something way wrong with that. And for me, it's not even a shock factor. I mean, you and I are warrior spirits. And as sweet as we are, we've been through hell and back. And we do understand combat and consciousness. But I tell you, I mean, people have to understand and wake up to what's happening globally here. We've got a collision between energies, dimensional space, consciousness, programming. I mean, it's like a free-for-all.
Yeah.
It's just.
And one thing I've been doing recently, especially after studying a little bit about the archons, is I started watching Stargate SG-1. Working my way through that series again. And there is so much incredible soft disclosure in that series. Yeah. It's unbelievable. I mean, the more I learn about the field that I'm part of here, this wacky field that we're both in, the more I had to go back and watch Stargate again because I learn new things, and then I think, man, I think that was in Stargate, and so I go back and I watch Stargate, and there it is.
Right. Yeah.
There's actually even a picture that I found on the internet that looks like one of the Goa'uld symbiotes, and it was a picture representing an Archon.
Very interesting. Yeah, there is a similar thread in the fabric. I've noticed that also. Well, I love the original film Stargate. Yeah, it definitely had a lot of information that I feel was very accurate on a lot of different levels. So yeah, I always feel like Dr. Jackson in that one. You know, I talk about stuff and people walk away.
Yeah. Oh well.
Yeah. No, not anymore. They used to though. The beginning they used to. It's just over their heads.
Well, it's getting so obvious in this world that it's hard for even the most asleep denial people to even face the fact that, you know, that something is not right with our government.
Right. Well, the thing is, it's a corporation. I think once you understand, and I'm not trying to be real political here, but obviously it dovetails into where we've been. But the bottom line is it's a corporation disguised as a government. Let's just be real. And that's the bottom line. And once people understand that you're dealing with a corporation, and this corporation we have outside investors. Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, when you look at DC is almost like a separate corporation and a separate country. So we're dealing with things that are very anomalous. And with that comes black space programs, black technology, and things that nobody will ever understand or have access to unless they're authorized to do so. And, of course, then we have the wars within wars and control and manipulation. You know, it's just crazy. Mass control, mass mind control. So we have to ask where it ends. But I do see through all these dark tides, eventually things will balance out. But, you know, I don't know if I'll live to see that. Yeah. To be honest with you. What is your take? What is your impression of what's going on? Did you ever get any insight?
Well, which part of what's going on?
Well, just insofar as worldly affairs or anything, do you see a better ending to the world here? Do you see a better ending to our country in the next 10 years?
Energetically, my personal feeling for the past, I don't know, you know, maybe 2 or 3 or 4 years before 2012, and continuing through now, my personal feeling is that energy and time is very fluid, and I think all bets are off as far as predictions. But I'm saying that, and then I'll say this, that I do feel that the more overt all the control and manipulation becomes, the more people are ready for that awakening or that ascension process that is talked about. And whether they know it consciously or whether it's still in the subconscious, I think more and more people are getting ready for this ascension process. And then so we see kind of a concerted effort from the bad guys to continue to dish up more fear porn. And I have to say this, that the fear actually affects our DNA. It actually shuts down our DNA from the expanded abilities that are part of our birthright.
Absolutely. It contracts the aura. Yes, you're right.
So from the fear porn that gets served up in the news media, whether it's print or whether it's television, you know, there's fear, fear, fear. There's strife. There is like these archonic implants that people have. They overstimulate the emotions, the negative emotions, and then the archons feed on that emotional energy. Right. And it's pushing people, especially people that are unaware of what's really going on and easy to manipulate. It really pushes them into more and more psychopathic, over-the-top, out of balance emotional behavior.
I totally agree. Well, I think no, go ahead.
I was just going to say that it just continues to kind of explode here and there, you know, like we have these shootings like Ferguson, Sandy Hook, you know, these things that are going on. I think people are being pushed by these interdimensional parasites to extremes of emotion that they would ordinarily not do on their own. Right.
Violence is off the charts. Yeah, you're right. But it's about spiritually fortification or people not being spiritually fortified. Let's put it that way, in my opinion. And that's what opens it up for whatever takeover. Now, whether that's psychotronic or an entity or whatever. But yeah, I totally agree with you on that one. And that's where spiritual preparation means a whole lot. You look at the Zen masters. I mean, as a martial artist, I can tell you, you have to be together, body, mind, and spirit. And you have to understand how to deflect attacks and know when to take down your opponent. And all of these components are ascended. It's not about being negative in any form or design. It's just about understanding the flow of energy and how it's used. But a lot of people they just haven't done the spiritual work as a bottom line. And I'm not talking religion, by the way. I'm just talking spirituality in general and awakening and higher consciousness orientation. But the bottom line also is there's a new human surfacing. And whether you want to understand transhumanism or not, that's part of the equation. And then we have the other aspect of it, which is full light ascension, which alters our DNA through frequency and natural light harmonics, which is actually the normal process of ascension. Yeah.
It's like there's two parallel things that are happening here. And one is like to merge people with the technological for more power and control for the people that hold the controls over the technology. And then there's, on the other side, there's this organic, natural process of ascension of people spiritually developing themselves to the point that they can evolve and ascend to a different level of reality.
Right.
That's also explored in Stargate SG-1.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, the soul is an ancient thing. I mean, it has everything it needs. It's immortal. It's infinite. It doesn't need any type of man-made technology. What I've noticed about the technology, it's all used for weaponization, control, manipulation, and of course, to create their own breed, apparently. And I mean, I guess that's okay if they want to live on their own little planet, but you have to play nice with everybody here. We're dealing with different races and species here on this world, even though we all have a similar suit of color, whatever it is. It doesn't matter. But that's the bottom line. We're dealing with different races and species. So I think if everybody learns to play nice on the game board, I think we'd have a better world.
Yeah. And, that movie that I mentioned earlier in our interview, Lucy, she evolved at the end to the point where when she reached 100% of using her brain capacity, she just disappeared. She dimensionally shifted someplace else.
Phase shift,
and then on all these computer screens came these words which you knew was her, and it said, "I am everywhere."
Nice.
And so she evolved, but the process of the film made this look like something that was scary and to be feared, and that we shouldn't even go there. And so that was, that's kind of my problem with the film.
Right.
Is, it happened artificially, but if it happens naturally, then definitely this is something that we want to have happen to us. It's our birthright.
Right. And even with the technological interface I've had, I have to tell you, Niara, I used it for the best. I could have done negative things with it. Okay. I didn't. And the bottom line is whatever has been upgraded in me and modified in me is permanent, at least as far as I can tell. And I just keep ascending. I just keep ascending with it. But what I don't want to see is people trying to steal the soul, spirit, energetic template and use it for devious purposes. And I think that you can get real devious with this kind of technological interface.
Yeah, you can. And they have already done that, because one of the other things Andrew talks about is the sacred geometry that is being misused in all the major city areas, especially in the United States, but maybe all over the planet. Like there is a geometry that underlies Washington, D.C. that's been documented and shown. And that's to actually control the people and make an energy bubble that actually controls the people in that area.
Right. Well, as I said, the people are a byproduct of their programs and their programming. But the thing is, what I've noticed, even with, take the Great Pyramid, for example, that's an amplification. I mean, it will amplify energetics and frequencies. Well, it's going to amplify the chaos over there because all those people cannot run and hold higher consciousness and multidimensional light waves. That's the bottom line. That's why you're seeing all that craziness that's going on out there. So it gets pretty wild without a doubt. Are you typing, Niara?
Am I typing?
We just heard some background noise.
Oh, no. I'm not typing. I'm not sure what that is.
Okay, we thought maybe it was coming from you. It's not me. I don't know what it is. Oh, well, we have... Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Is it still happening?
I hear noise in the background on your end, yeah. It sounds like you're either doing your nails or...
Oh, no, I'm not doing my nails. I'm just... I actually had to get up and move around a little bit.
Okay, maybe that's what it was.
Because of my back. So.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah. No, I'm going to make sure you move around a little bit for sure.
So I've been quietly, gently walking back and forth.
Neat. Okay. Well, some of the MyLabs, now let's get back to the MyLabs just a little bit, and the contactees and the abductees. What do you say to these people who are in need of a validation and support, and how do you use discernment between those who are legitimate cases and just plain psychotics?
Well, I guess if somebody was to come and work with me and they ended up being psychotic or having one of these personality disorders, it would become pretty evident in 2 or 3 sessions. And at that point, I would probably refer them on to a a more stringent mental health professional. I mean, I would have to do that because I'm just not qualified to handle somebody that has that kind of an issue.
Right. And have you ever had anyone get triggered by you?
People are getting triggered by my book. And,
are they?
You know, I mean, it's a very healing book to read, I'm sure. But some of the things that I've been through are triggering for some of the people that are reading it. But then, so they kind of just move through it a little more slowly. And then when they get to part 3, then I think they're going to love that part because there's so much in there about consciousness and healing and trying to work with what is on this world and make it a better place.
Right. I think it can be a rough ride when you start looking into these things. There's no doubt about it. Actually, if I hadn't been exposed to it, I probably wouldn't even be involved in it at all.
Yeah, likewise.
Yeah, I'd be doing my own thing, you know, teaching the martial arts and the stuff that I always did. But unfortunately, I did too many investigations, I guess, in the right direction. But, you know, that's what happens when you start rolling up your sleeves and getting involved. Things change. So do you think there's a way to deactivate a test subject from the alters and the false memories and influence of their handlers and operators?
Can you say that question again? I didn't quite.
Sure. Well, do you think there's a way to deactivate a test subject from the alters?
From the alters?
Personalities, alters, and false memories? Do you think there's a way to switch those off immediately?
There may be a way. You know, I would not want to say there isn't a way, but I'm also guessing that, see, alters come up in a person out of severe abuse. And basically an alter is the human being's subconscious creating the alter as like a personality defense mechanism against the abuse that's happening. And so it's actually the person that creates the alters. And the alters are created for the person's protection, for the protection of their mind, their body, and their psyche. And so I think it's more the person that that dance that happens between the different alters and then the original personality is really seated in the person itself. Although there could be keywords and key phrases or code words or whatever that trigger a particular alter to come out or to go back in hiding. But I'm guessing that because this is a process that the mind does to protect the person being abused, that it's probably more something in the realm of that person's ability to work with, especially the more awareness that they have about their alters and the ways that they've been abused to create the alters, then that puts more information in their hands that they can use to help themselves. Right,
that makes sense. Yeah, well, there's a split in consciousness for sure due to the duress of the assault, so that makes sense. I do know they are able to create synthetic alters as well, which are based on the artificial intelligence, and those are pretty creepy, and those are all done by the handler and controller and can be triggered by them. So that's something else. That's a different ball of wax altogether. But it gets really complex when you think about it, and of course our minds are very complex in general, so it's just fascinating when you think about all this stuff. But I mean, I look at it on some levels as fascinating and interesting, and on other sides it's just kind of disturbing, you know.
For sure.
And did you say you don't have any implants? Is that correct? Any type?
Well, I probably do have them. I have this bump behind my right ear that's pretty big, and sometimes it seems to change. Like sometimes it seems to stick out more than others. It's kind of weird. I don't know what that's about, but I woke up with that at age 9, with pain behind my right ear when it first appeared, and I remember thinking, God, do I have cancer tumor back there? Am I going to die? And then I went from being afraid I was going to die, which was pretty intense, to forgetting about it. I just forgot about it, and then if I thought about it again in the ensuing years, I just thought, oh, that's just part of my natural bone. And then I had the original memory come back years later when I was watching Fire in the Sky. And a picture of an owl flashed on the screen, and when the owl flashed on the screen, the original memory of waking up with the pain and the bump at age 9 came back.
That's really weird. You know, you're not the first person that's talked about an owl as a trigger, by the way.
Yeah.
I find that very interesting.
It is.
You know, it makes you wonder what kind of mass hypnosis is going on with these programs and triggers. I tell you what. And you could read it off. A lot of people could just blow it off and say, oh, it's a coincidence. There are no coincidences. But I tell you, the more you start getting into this technology and understanding programs and the way the operators work, it's very interesting how they are using triggers and keywords and imagery. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it certainly does. I mean, you see a lot of people these days, a lot of them were really into the Batman. That was a trigger too, unfortunately, and I used to love Batman. But then you had that crazy shooter, that happened out here in Colorado. So all triggered, all programmable.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And I wonder to what degree some of the military still is being programmed like that. And I guess you don't know until they snap.
Yeah, I guess not. It's just, you just never know. And that's like, we already have manipulation electronically, manipulation by these other dimensional creatures. Mm-hmm. And then if you add drugs to that, oh my God.
Yeah. That's an overload for sure.
Yeah.
Well, and the drugs just accentuate everything, without a doubt. And what amazes me, they put these people on antipsychotics. A lot of them don't even need to be on antipsychotics. And of course, that's making things worse. And if you're dealing with psychotronic programming, that's the last thing you want to do is put them on an antipsychotic.
Right.
So, yeah, there's just so much. And of course, I'm beginning to look at the community of psychologists in general, and I'm understanding that they either are playing dumb deliberately or they're part of the equation of deception. Mm-hmm. So, and I don't know which one it is, but honestly, yeah, they have to understand technology. And if I was in that field, I'd be really diving into this technology and understanding it from A to Z.
I was talking to somebody about this the other day, and we kind of both agreed that we would never go see a professional therapist or psychiatrist again.
No.
I just would never do it.
No, I mean, in my opinion, they're hacks, and that's the bottom line. And they don't understand consciousness. They don't understand multidimensional, the multidimensional mind or true psychic awareness and psychic centers. Everybody's naturally psychic. Just because they're not programmed to understand it, that doesn't mean anything. And I see that all the time. Oh, there's no such thing as people being psychic. Are you kidding? We're multidimensional beings. We have a supercomputer mind that we don't even use. And some of us are switched on, and a lot of people aren't. Mm-hmm. So, and then, of course, the ones that are switched on usually get tagged and targeted, for programs.
There's one branch of psychology that might still be a good branch to work with someone, and that would be the one that John Mack was involved with, which is transpersonal psychology. Transpersonal psychology looks at all those expanded abilities. It looks at psychic ability. It's open to a whole lot more of the multidimensional realm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's good. Mm-hmm. Well, I think also any type of spiritual healing is good. And I'm not talking, the charlatans. I'm talking legitimate people who are very good at running energy, running light into the body from multidimensional grids, and that will help also. Mm-hmm. And actually just kind of helping them resonate to higher overtones of true celestial energies versus all this distorted stuff that keeps bombarding everybody from day to day. So that's really interesting there. So let me ask you a quick question here. So are you working with MyLabs right now, MyLab abductee cases? What are you doing right now?
Well, I'm actually getting ready to start opening my practice up again on a limited basis. Mm-hmm. I was kind of taking a break from it during the book writing years, which kind of kept going into, 2 years, then 3 years, then 4 years, and almost 5 years. So I haven't been working with anybody that much, a little bit here and there, but I am going to start opening up my practice again to working with people. And I'm trying to also work out a way that I can be accessible to people, people who have really been impacted by this stuff. I mean, they're really in bad shape. Mm-hmm. They are... They're not able to hold down a job because of their PTSD, because when employers are trying to control them, as they sometimes must, to get the job done, these people are not able to handle that because they've been controlled and abused under that control so badly, they can't hold down a job. Mm-hmm. And so for those folks, if they want to connect with me, I'm thinking about having once or twice a month a day where I have like 5 appointments or 4 appointments open for people to just talk with me, because sometimes a lot of healing can happen just when people are deeply listened to. Mm-hmm. And so I want to do that, and that will be like a really, really reduced rate of like $25.
Mm-hmm. Making it affordable.
Yeah, make it as affordable as possible. But I figure if people are going to connect with me on the internet and they have at least a computer or the ability to connect with me on the internet, that, hopefully they can afford $25.
Oh, sure. No, I think that's very gracious of you. Yeah. It's real interesting. You remember at the summit, at the Mind Control Summit, we had speakers there who were being what we call targeted individuals. And a lot of them had a hard time even talking because they were being interfered with to such an extent. It was very sad.
Yeah.
And if people don't understand that, I mean, they look at people and they say, oh, this person's stuttering, or this person is, their words aren't coming out right. Did they ever hear of neuro-linguistic programming and deployment of psychotronic warfare transmissions? I mean, literally, there's so much going on, and it's like when you see people, try to have a little more compassion for your fellow man or woman, because I'll tell you point blank, there are so many people out there who are being affected by some form of, whether it's gang stalking, psychotronic harassment, you name it. It comes in all forms and designs, and I don't have to tell you that, Niara, but I do ask our listeners to have a little more patience with some of the things you're experiencing or witnessing from others, because some of those people might be programmed or being targeted.
Mm-hmm. And we like to talk about the sheeple. But really, the sheeple deserve our compassion because they are what they have been made into being.
Right.
And they are working to pay the bills, keep a roof over their head, take care of their kids. And maybe they don't have time to dig into all this stuff. Mm-hmm. And then people, point fingers and they say, look at those sheeple. They're so stupid. They're so unconscious. Well, that's true, but they are what they've been made into.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and I think the best thing we can do is just hold a space inside of our own hearts. They will find their own awakening somehow.
Right. I think compassion goes a long way. I mean, you can always be compassionate toward your fellow man. That's the bottom line. And honestly, I know you and I were recruited in different forms, and we were good test pilots for what they wanted, especially on my end and on your end. And it's just like that's the way it is. That's the way it has rolled. But that doesn't make us any less compassionate to other people. But I would say I wish people would step up a little bit and try to understand. They don't have to agree, but I do hope they try to understand. Because it's huge, and this is the wave of the future, by the way. This isn't me forewarning or this isn't fear porn. This is literally me alerting everyone that there's a technological program that's running right now that's really affecting our society on a global scale. And if you just take a look around, turn on, I don't want to tell you to turn on the news, but literally take a look around and you'll understand what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. And I know you understand that as well. But
I do.
What are some of the giveaways that someone might be on my lab or a mind control target or case, or would you say?
Anxiety, and I'm talking about some pretty serious anxiety that you can't pin down to a cause. Mm-hmm. Like if you have anxiety but you can't pin down a cause, or you have no memory of where the anxiety initiated, there's a good chance you might have covert ops involvement in your life. That would be the first red flag. And if you have suicidal ideation, and you don't really understand where that's coming from, that would be another one. Because a lot of times when you have that kind of anxiety or you have that kind of abuse, somewhere inside of you where you know the abuse happened, your heart is breaking. Your heart is breaking because now you know that other human beings are capable of doing such horrible things. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
And so those are two of the things I would say right off the bat. If you have periods of missing time, that's a flag, not just for ET stuff, but for military abductions as well. Mm-hmm. And, those are some of the things that I would just say right off the cuff.
Right. And was your house ever bugged? Did you ever have anything like that? People following you or anything strange?
Not to my knowledge. I did hear strange noises on my phone. After I got my memories back in the mid to late 90s, mm-hmm. I would have phone calls and I'd hear a strange clicking, or I'd hear something that sounded a little bit like a tape spinning around. And it's a given that there's probably some kind of monitoring going on. Mm-hmm. And I'm a patient at the VA clinic, so when they do my blood work, my blood may be being checked for other things. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I have no way of knowing.
Right. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, did you give a diary, or do you keep a diary or a logbook or anything like that?
I have on and off through the years, and a lot of it went into my book. Mm-hmm. Okay. But yeah, I don't keep a diary all the time because, it's just right now I'm just too busy. Mm-hmm. And I'm trying very hard to, heal this back of mine and this foot and leg issue. All those years of sitting to write the book, they really took a toll on the body because I was sitting on pinched nerves and herniated discs the whole time. Okay. And I've paid a price, and now I have to pay the piper and exercise and try to turn this around.
Did you ever have surgery for the disc or no?
No, I never had surgery.
Yeah, that can be pretty negative and nasty too. So, well, it's good you didn't have the surgery.
No, I don't want the surgery.
I don't blame you at all. Yeah, I try to repair it. You can do that, actually. I know people who have had bulging discs and everything else, and they healed through diligent training and just, holistic therapy.
Yeah.
It's a good thing. It sounds like you're on the right track for that. So what do you feel is a solution to the mass abductions being done, which are being used on a lot of levels to traumatize and assault a target?
Well, on an individual level, again, try to look at what's going on. If you feel like there's something going on with you, then I would get in touch with someone who might be able to help you with that, like someone who could do hypnosis, or maybe a really skilled psychic reader that could kind of look into your aura and see what's been happening that maybe you don't remember. So on an individual level, I would say that is the best way to start. And then start, whatever information you get, start looking at it and seeing what you can, what other connecting points you can find in other information out there. You just kind of go on a personal quest of information gathering. So, and then on a national, societal level, we really need to do some legal action to get rid of that National Security Act of 1941 and start to have some public oversight of all these alphabet agencies and their activities, like the NSA, the FBI, the CIA, all those things. They're operating without any public oversight at all, and they're harming people.
Right. Well, yeah, that's very devious. Did you say 1941 or 1947?
47.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay. Yeah, I agree with you on that one, but I'd like to see it all turn around for the better. And once again, I'm one for supporting technology. I love technology. I love advanced sciences and everything else pertaining to that. Yeah, and I'm not really against the synthetic telepathy if it's used with wisdom. I don't have a problem with that either. It's just how things are being deployed, and it's how people are being victimized. And it's such a negative little game that's being played out right now. And how many people have to suffer until it all clears out, Well,
technology is a great tool, but it would be a bad master.
Right.
Because it's not capable of feeling, it's not capable of emotion, and it could get really horrible if we fell under the control of artificial intelligence. It could be tremendously horrible way to live.
Well, yeah, you're talking about a slave race, point blank.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no compassion, there's no soul involved with artificial intelligence, even though they try to create it. Now, you can talk about the artificial intelligence connected to more of an advanced race, but still, what I call ascended machine technology, it has no connection to the black program with the artificial intelligence. The ascended machines are the more symbiotic extraterrestrials that know how to merge with their craft and change and that sort of thing. But this has nothing to do with that. This is a man-made clone of something that's extraterrestrial, which isn't working like an extraterrestrial because it's manufactured by man.
Yeah.
So made by Mattel,
Well, if you make a machine that can think for itself and you program it in a particular way, then it's going to act out its programming. And if you've programmed it with good things, then it will act out good stuff. If you've programmed it with bad things that are harmful, it will act that out.
Right. Yeah. And I wonder if it's just more neutral now, but I do know they have a big array system of artificial intelligence in the underground. So whether that's being deployed full speed, well, that's yet to be seen, but I'm sure it will be at some point. So that's not even a prediction. That's just me knowing about it. But I was going to ask you real quick here. Let's see here. We're getting ready to wrap this up soon enough. So once again, I'd like everybody to know how they can get in touch with you and where they can get your book.
Okay. My email address again is gaiatribe.niara@gmail.com, and that's spelled GAIATRIBE, so gaiatribe.niara, NIARA, @gmail.com. So that's the email address. And my websites again are facingtheshadow.embracingthelight.com and encounterswithhealing.com. And you can go to Facing the Shadow, Embracing the Light to get a copy of the book or to get information about the book. You can order, at that page, you can order a signed copy from me if you really want that. Or you can order it from my Create Space page, or you can order it from Amazon.com. And it's also available on Amazon as a Kindle book.
Nice. That's excellent. Well, thank you. And I do want to thank you again for being on tonight. Maybe we can talk about happier times next time you come on. I know you and I get involved in some hardcore subjects, but, sometimes it just needs to be communicated. And This is all for real, whether it sounds science fiction or not.
Yeah.
Sorry, folks. I mean, the bottom line is this is what's happening.
But you just have to trust the synchronicities that the right people that need to hear this information we're talking about tonight gets to the right people.
Right.
That somehow somebody will share a link with them and they will hear this and it will make such a difference for them. And then another little light goes on planet Earth.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, all beacons, just shining away there. How many years do you think it takes for an abductee to regain their life, if at all? And how do you feel about your life right now? Do you feel like you've actually regained control?
Well, my public life still feels a little out of control.
Yeah.
From publishing the book and having email out of control and everything. But no, I feel like I'm doing pretty well. I don't know that I want to tempt fate by saying I have my total life under control. But, I feel like I'm doing pretty well. And I think that as far as trying to come to terms with one's experiences, it will happen faster. The faster you can get out of denial, the more you're going to process those experiences and move through the progression. Like there's a progression of, if you're an ET abductee in the beginning, you think, I didn't ask for this, and you call yourself an abductee. And then as you progress with your understanding of the ET group that you're interacting with, you might shift that from abductee, which is a victim word, to ET experiencer, which is more of a neutral term.
Right.
And then as you progress further, you might find that you're actually connected to a certain group of ETs that might be your star family. And then at that point, you would be calling yourself more of a contactee and not an experiencer anymore. So it kind of goes in that progression, and you can come to terms with it more quickly the sooner you get out of denial. And the way you can get out of denial is to look at the literature and the people that are out there, being interviewed about their experiences. And you look at the connecting points. How similar is what they're talking about to the experiences you've had? And that can help get you out of denial more quickly. And then once you're out of denial, then I think you can move more rapidly through the process.
Exactly. And also I think a support group is very important.
For sure. And Misha Johnston has wonderful support groups, on Facebook.
Yeah, she's great. I love Misha. She's awesome. We had a good time when we were out there in Vegas, didn't we?
Yeah, wonderful time.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting when you check everybody's experiences where they've been. Oh, my gosh.
I know.
Amazing, without a doubt. So what is your impression of the black goo? Did we ever touch on that at all?
I don't think we ever touched on it, and it's not something that I've looked at deeply, so maybe you could enlighten me a little bit.
Well, I've only heard a little bit about it from Miles. He talks about the black goo of some kind of an extraterrestrial design. But to me, it seems like something that's been manufactured to some extent, but I don't have much experience with it at all.
Yeah.
Sure. Just wonder if you had ever heard anything about it, considering where you've been.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything about it, but again, that's something else that has kind of crept into science fiction programs. I think it was, I remember it in the X-Files.
Right, yeah.
And I also remember it in Stargate SG-1.
Yeah, see, I remember it from X-Files also, so yeah, it's very interesting, for sure. Yeah. Do you have memories? Do you dream normally?
I haven't been dreaming much lately that I remember. I think I am dreaming, but I just haven't been remembering my dreams for quite a long time.
Okay.
And I'm not sure what that's about.
Right.
But it's got me a little curious.
Yeah, that is interesting. But you don't have any induction or any experiences right now in your state right now, do you?
No.
Okay, so that's kind of subsided.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good thing.
Pretty much subsided. And I think what happened to me at the Mind Control Summit, both in 2013 and 2014, was just because I was in Las Vegas and a whole group of us were together, and it was easy to pick us all up. On Saturday night, well,
So do you have recall of that?
I don't.
Okay.
But when I regressed Misha, because I do Dolores Cannon's hypnosis technique, I regressed Misha, and she remembered under hypnosis that we were all taken. Yeah, it reminds me. And she said that I was really pissed. Well, that sounds like you. She said I was standing there with my arms folded, saying, "Let's get this crap over with a lot of colorful language." and get us back to bed.
It's really interesting. Well, it seems like last year, or this past year rather, was much better than the prior year, in my opinion, energetically speaking.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was like night and day. And I think that's because a few people who were triggers there were not there at this time. I won't mention their names, but a lot of programmed units that weren't there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Made a huge difference. And if you notice, we had quite a few strange stalker types.
Mm-hmm.
It was really wild. So, yeah, but I think it's getting more and more acknowledged and respected as we progress along. And it doesn't hurt to have some doctors there validating it, like Dr. Robert Duncan.
I really hope that Lorianne will keep the Mind Control Summit going.
I do too.
I think the more if it keeps showing up year after year, I think it's going to be better and better attended because so much information is coming out about this all the time. And I think that it's a really, really important subject and it really needs to be aired.
Oh, I totally agree. And I'm wondering how many people would get triggered just by knowing about it. That's what it makes me wonder, because it does make people a little skittish. It's a strange topic, to be honest. And I mean,
it's a scary topic.
It is. And honestly, I would not be involved in it had I not experienced this type of technology I was interfaced with. So I totally get where people are. But I do realize that it's almost an epidemic right now, and that it does need to be addressed, and it does need to be respected. And a lot of people out there, I mean, I can't count how many people have implantation. Mm-hmm. Whether it's etheric or something that's synthesized,
Yeah. Well, I go into that in my book a lot about mind control. I talk about mind control on entire populations through indoctrination and media. And then I talk about mind control in individuals and the trauma-based mind control. So there is a tremendous amount of information in my book. It's not only my experiences, but my experiences and my healing process really set the stage for all these deeper awarenesses and realizations to come forth about the universe as being alive itself, and we're all part of it. Right. That thing that you were talking about, consciousness, energy, frequency. Yep. I mean, that was the real gift of my experiences and processing through them, just to realize that I live in a living universe. Yeah. Where life really should be regarded as sacred and not interfered with. And yet we have this mess here.
Right. And what are they afraid of? You have to ask. I mean, to me, it's nothing. It's just like, I love to merge with Source and the full light universe. To me, it's the most beautiful thing you can do is be part of that equation. And yet some people want to detach from that. They don't want to be part of it. Not only do they not want to be part, they want to bring everybody down, and they don't want people ascending. And that to me is like, it's just, I can't even fathom that. But for me, I've always been trying to enlighten people and awaken them,
Well, it's the murder-suicide philosophy. When I worked at a women's center, we had a murder-suicide, and it was a cop. And his daughters were graduating from high school on this day, and the daughters were confronted with the fact that their father had killed their mother and then killed himself. Wow. And the mentality behind that is, it says, I know you don't want to be with me anymore, or you don't want to, be part of my thing anymore, and so I don't want you to be with anybody else. And then I don't want to face the consequences of my own behavior of killing you, so I'm going to kill myself too. I mean, how crazy is that? Right.
Yeah. It's like taking him down with the Titanic.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not good at all. Well, we are getting ready to wrap this up pretty soon here, and I just want to thank everybody for listening tonight. And Niara, it's been a pleasure to have you on, and I do hope to have you on real soon, and hopefully we'll touch base in person too, and be able
I hope so.
To touch base and all that good stuff. And I'm not sure what's coming up next. I'm sure Keith will let me know. Excuse me. So once an abductee, always an abductee. What do you think? You think it's permanent? Or a contactee, experiencer? Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I think pretty much it's something that becomes part of your life forever.
I agree. And changing forever. Now, with all the research that you've done, you've said that it definitely connects in with ancestry and family. Do you still think that the majority of people who are contactees have had their ancestors also contactees?
Yeah, I think so. I think they follow bloodlines. Yeah.
And I suppose you don't want to talk about your bloodline at all.
My bloodline, I have Cherokee, a little bit, and I think they really are looking for that because it's like original people bloodline, and it's good genetics to work with, and so I have that. I'm English, Scotch, Irish, Celtic, with a little German thrown in, and a little Scandinavian, Norwegian thrown in.
Interesting.
So that's me. I'm kind of a Heinz 57.
Right. Yeah. It seems to me like the Celts and the Native American, that comes in a lot.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. Yeah. I have that kind of lineage on my mother's side too. So that's very interesting. And let's see here. Is there anything else you wanted to add before? We're getting ready to wrap this up pretty soon, but is there anything you would like to say?
I just want to thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, it's a pleasure, Niara. It's always good to have you on, and I respect where you've been and what you're doing right now. And you've been through hell and back, and you're out and you're shining.
Thank you. So are you.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's full speed ahead with me. It's my fiery Aries, I think.
Okay. Yeah, for sure. And I'm not too far behind. I'm another Mars-ruled sign. I'm a Scorpio.
Are you really? Yeah, that's the masculine sign. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, there you go. So that has a lot to do with secrecy too, and of course transmutation on so many different levels. So yeah, we'll have to discuss astrology next time you come on the show, or something a little bit more uplifting. But I do thank you all for tuning in tonight, and I hope you appreciated the information. And I think we're just about ready to roll out of here. I'm probably jumping the gun a minute here. Hang on, we're good. Okay, everybody, have a great weekend and week. All right, thank you, Niara. Thank you, Keith.